What is emotional unavailability? At the surface, it's rather straightforward. You or another person don't open their heart fully and completely to let love in. And as a result, you prioritize relationships that are marked by self-sabotage, non-reciprocity, or other forms of distance. You might be with a workaholic. You might be with somebody who keeps things at the surface. You yourself might be terrified of vulnerability. So as a result, you hide the core parts of yourself as a way to gain favor and love. And this is a form of self-betrayal. And we then play out these manifestations, oftentimes on repeat, over and over and over and over again. I thought this one was different. I thought this time it would be different. I thought. And even when we are aware of our patterns of self-sabotage and even picking emotionally unavailable partners, cognitively speaking, it doesn't mean that we're prepared to actually choose differently. And this is where I love what I do. And I hope you do too, because understanding the nature of the mind and what is actually going on under our hoods is really beyond calling. It's more like an obsession for me. And even in my personal time, after years of doing this, I still find time to understand the inner workings of my own mind and other people's. Recently, I noticed I had this observation when I was microdosing with psilocybin, which I hadn't done for a very long time. And the reason I like consciousness modulation technologies like this is because it changes the way you see things and it changes the way you think. And when you set an intention, it allows you to embark on a journey. And so, for example, in this particular session, I set the intention to receive. And a different session was about creating. And as soon as I found myself trying to create music and art, I stopped. I put on my headphones and I went into a meditation stance. And I just observed and received and observed and felt the full depth of my emotional experience. And this crazy thing happened where I noticed my mind reaching out to a particular person with this ingrained thought pattern. And this person and I no longer really have a relationship. And my mind was drawn to them for a very, very long time, repetitively so, especially when I was emotionally unavailable. And there was something about this shooting out. It was almost like this line of energy from my headspace. So if you imagine my astral form, just like this energy, fuzzy energy, and this humanoid form, kind of bluish, translucent, laying down in the astral field, there was like this little line of energy that was trying to connect to this person. What I realized is that I wasn't actually connecting with that person. I was connecting with the fantasy of that person, an illusion of that person. And I spent some time unpacking this because the reality of this person is different than the construct that I have in my mind and has been for a while and has repeatedly shown me that this image of them that I have in my head is not actually them. It's not how they're choosing to show up in their everyday form and their physicality and the way they talk or write emails or make life choices. And it struck me that when we peel back all of the layers, at least this particular layer, using myself as an example, and I do believe that there are other examples of emotional unavailability. When we peel off the layers and we start to understand what is actually going on under the hood, I believe emotional unavailability is marked by thought patterns and attachments that keep us bound to fantasies and illusions. And if you resonate with this, when you look at the decisions in your life or the attachments or the obsessions to certain people, particularly unavailable partners, what you might find is that you are more heavily attached to this happily ever after image that you were planning for that wasn't actually unfolding. You were receiving evidence and data and 3D reality checks all along the way, as well as intuitive markers saying, hey, psst, 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 maybe even family and friends. Now I'm deviating from my story and talking to somebody specifically because I can feel it in the quantum field. Somebody needs to hear this. You might have noticed all along the way that reality was trying to tell you that it was turning into one thing, but your mind wasn't accepting it. And your ears weren't listening to the counsel and the wisdom of the people who you surrounded yourself with. And as a result, you were surprised, but you weren't surprised when you saw the endings. Plural, because whoever I'm speaking to, this has happened on repeat. And as a result, what you're finding out now is that your mind is a very powerful organ if you're still in 3D, binary, linear, reductionist, materialist consciousness. I don't know if you are for this particular listener, but some people are. And your mind has an overdrive setting, which allows you to repetitively throw these balls up in the air and catch them like a juggler. Except these balls, nobody can see except for you. And you're building the story in your mind about going to be the world-class juggler or go to a circus, but nobody can see you juggling. You're the only one that can see what you see. And in fact, you're actually like in a Shark Tank. And you don't realize it because your mind, being the powerful instrument that it is wired to habitually, perhaps like a defense mechanism or a safety blanket, go to this fantasy or this illusion that may not be coming true anytime soon. Now, there is something to be said about being a reality shifter and opening your mind to other realms. As I have learned, sometimes the hard way, is that reality shifting and some of the esoteric practices are often on a delay and require the free will participation of the other people that you've scripted into your reality, into your desired reality. So let's say, in your case, whoever this is resonating with, let's say that you have a particular person that you have inserted into a character slot in your karmic play that you want to play out. But that person is scripting another reality with somebody else, and you're not in their reality. Whose reality is going to win? How does it really work? Well, if you want a reality filled and populated with NPCs, then go right ahead. But if you want a reality with the essence of the person that you're longing for, that your heart is wanting to connect with at an energetic level, as a conscious, sovereign being that you are, I believe that you would also want a conscious, sovereign being to connect with at that deeper place, whatever it looks like for you. And it could be a platonic business connection. It doesn't always have to be romantic. It could also be family. So if you want more than an NPC experience, this is another insight that I had, that sometimes when we're manifesting and we're manifesting with empty vectors, meaning we're the only ones that are producing that manifestation. And we're kind of showing up to the party, but there's nobody else there except for ourselves. In some sectors, you can actually create an existence in a world around that manifestation with NPCs, and they'll have their baseline functioning. But they're going to be like NPCs, acting like NPCs, behaving like NPCs. And their baseline level of consciousness may or may not be satisfactory, depending on how far you're already advanced on the awakening journey. But I don't want to get too far off track. So what happens is that when our minds are on overdrive, trying to script out a reality and to make something happen that is a fantasy and an illusion, this is actually the foundation of emotional unavailability. It's not the only foundation, but it's a big one. Because when you realize that in the beginning, you're tied to an illusion and you enter into a relationship, and the closer you get to that person, the further you feel from them, right? How does that work? How is it that you can enter into a marriage and feel as though the person that you're wanting to spend the rest of your life with, that you've been dreaming about, this happily ever after ending, you feel alienated from them and things are not working out the way that you had hoped? How is it that the closer we get to people, the further we actually feel from them? When we're emotionally unavailable, this is exactly what happens. And it's because we have, in my opinion, in some cases especially, attached ourselves to the fantasy and not the reality. So we missed all the times that they were averting eye contact when we were trying to be intimate with them. We missed all the times they were picking up their phone when we were trying to initiate an important conversation. We missed all the times that we were feeling heavy emotions around them, perhaps even sadness or crying, and they were oblivious because they were not really in tune with us, and vice versa. And instead, in our minds, we went back to juggling the balls. Well, if we just make it past this, then it's going to turn itself around. Oh, if we just do this, then, oh, if I just go to this tantra retreat and we could just do a couples thing, and et cetera, et cetera. Missing the entire time how they were actually flirting with other people in front of you the entire courtship. And so when we start to understand that our minds will try to cast reality to fit with our desires and our hopes and our dreams, we start to understand how it can go so wrong sometimes. And what I noticed in myself, coming from obviously a pattern of emotional unavailability, where I chose partners preferentially who were emotionally unavailable, sometimes physically unavailable, and I myself was emotionally unavailable, terrified of deep intimacy and connection, which is why I developed this whole coaching program to help people out of what I've experienced because I know how hard it is and how lonely it is, actually. Even though you might have the perfect relationship on paper, even though everything might look great from the outside, no real complaints, you might even have it easy. You feel it. Your soul feels it when you're not actually connected. Sometimes people can tell too. They can read the body language of you and your partner, and they can tell that there's a vacuum in between you, or that one person is reaching and reaching and reaching, and the other is elusive, always on the go, always turning away, literally, sometimes always physically turning their shoulders away, talking to other people, walking in front of them, leaving them behind. There are many ways, physical ways that this can manifest. And so when you understand that you can be in a picture perfect world and feel lonely, you start to realize that, yes, you're a powerful manifester. You can create anything that you want. And how is it that you're a powerful manifester and you create the experience of emotional unavailability, even in a picture perfect life? How does that happen? It's because there's something that goes on under the hood. When I realized that there was still a part of my brain that was preferentially trying to ping this person that has zero interest in my life right now, and I shouldn't say that. Very little. It's like a distance. It's like a very distance, like, how are you doing? Oh, I'm doing great. Okay, good. And then we go our separate ways. And I feel the same way. So it's mutual. But there's still a part of my brain that's trying to ping them and to share myself and to show myself to somebody who is not really on board with that. Out of all of the people in my phone book that I could think to share this new art project with, that's not the right, they don't even have an overlapping interest in this, right? They literally don't have an interest. And my mind is jumping to share it with them. How does that work? Brain entrainment is a beautiful phenomenon. We have thought patterns that become so rigid and precise in their rigidity. Other people call them thought loops. Hamster wheels is another way to say it. Programming is another way. We can create our own programs. Sometimes programming is used in this powerless victim consciousness way. You know, like we are a result of the program and the program was installed into us by the matrix or the matrix operators, and we have no choice. But this is obviously not true. And when you understand that you create your own programs and you are responsible for your programs, it frees you up. And yes, there can be remnants of people installing things on top of you and a baseline existence that you were born into. This is like your fundamental operating system, but you can upgrade it. You're not stuck with Windows 98 just because it was preloaded into your hardware and your system. Like you have options. So when you understand this and you start to play with your programming, what you'll observe is that the brain has repetitive cycles. And this is what Dr. Joe Dispenza talks about. And I reference this a lot because I feel like it's so fundamentally important. When we wake up in the morning, we load a series of programs, our identity, our plans, our preferences, our family units, our life configurations, all of the choices that we made from the preceding day. We wake up and we take them along with us every single day. And it builds in a linear fashion. And that's how we grow and change and also stay bootstrapped to this concept of space time. And then we process the world and a linear sequence and a chain of events. We respond to those, we feel things about those, and we plan to do things differently or to keep engaging in certain actions and behaviors, like relationships. Then we go to sleep and we wake up the next day and we do it all over again. And then it's this very slow, incremental process. And so as a result, what happens is that we have a lot of thought processes that become entrained because it's more efficient to do this. And where things go wrong is when we are unconsciously self-sabotaging or creating manifestation potentials that actually work against us or waste our time, our energy, or pair us with the wrong people. This is what all of the manifestation teachings are about. Helping to awaken our consciousness and understanding to realize how we are choosing the wrong people, places, or situations. To exercise our power and our alignment thoughtfully, and to surround ourselves with the opportunities that so the law of attraction can actually flow into us and through us and around us without blocking everything. When we have these thought loops that are repetitively going and we're not aware of what they are, that's when we unconsciously create problems for ourselves. And I don't believe in mistakes, but sometimes the consequences of our actions are heavier than others. And sometimes the decisions that we make open doors that lead to what some might call would be unfavorable circumstances. And it's not that there's futility in this. Everything is worthy as fodder for learning. So it's not really that it's wasted. But let's say you're trying to get to a magnificent manifestation, or let's say you're trying to meet up with somebody and you take a dead end road that's going to sidetrack you for 20 years and possibly send you to jail in the process. Not literal jail, but, like a figurative one, or perhaps literal, depending on what your choices are. I hope not for you. I hear the food is terrible there. And as a result, you might sit at that decision tree very carefully, or you might just unconsciously and compulsively, like your brain is wired to do, create in a loop. And at the end of that road, looking backwards, you might even then not fully understand why you chose the way that you did. That's what shadow work is all about. And that's what understanding the nature of the mind is really centered around. And really understanding what's underneath your hood to understand your part of how reality is being constructed. And understanding that you are driving a ship. And when the ship is about to hit an iceberg, are you going to stand on the side of it, look down, and gawk the entire time? Or are you going to run up to the captain's chamber and make a correction? And the only way you can do that is if you understand that you're about to hit an iceberg. And the only way you can do that is if you're looking out for it and you're understanding where you're trying to go. When people are unconscious, they don't even know. They don't even know that they're in a ship and that they have the capacity to drive. They don't even know that there's water or an iceberg or that there's a destination that they're trying to get to. And this is what the beautiful part of the self-mastery journey is all about. Taking your life into your own hands and your creation into your own hands. And the degree in which you can do that is profound. when you understand what's happening under your hood. And when you start to see your thought patterns, the repetitive ones especially, and how your brain entrainment is even sometimes years after walking away from a situation, still trying to revive it in the same configuration, in the same pattern, and re engage in the same drama, what you'll find is how helpless we are sometimes to our architecture when we're unaware of it. We don't have to stay helpless. We don't have to stay a victim. We don't have to stay in victim consciousness. We don't have to accept any program. But we have to be awake enough to be able to discuss it, to see it, and to understand from a higher perspective of wisdom how it's actually creating on our behalf. This is why I am a proponent of transhumanism, and not the creepy kind. I've lost listeners. I've lost friends because I openly say this. Because people don't see an alternative. They don't see the value of transhumanism except for the fear narrative that has been propagandized. And this is why I believe it's so important. Because when we understand what's really happening under the hood and how much of a slave we are to our own machinery, biology, and software architecture, we understand how much thought, cycle, energy it takes to disengage some of these patterns, like emotional unavailability, which I have personally been working on for decades now, and still have little remnants of. Going to the wrong people at the wrong time who were not actually interested in what I'm trying to share with them, who were not actually interested. And as a result, it keeps these cycles going when I'm supposed to be clearing and holding the space. And in my worldview, there would be a software update where we could actually literally play with the thought architecture and design it and say, that pattern doesn't work for me anymore. I understand that I have a thought impulse and an inclination and an energy that's shooting out of my auric field, trying to go to this direction, but I don't want it to go there anymore. I want to just stop it right in its tracks. It'll be some time, space, perhaps, before we can get there.